result. That's a great outcome. We did a report recently into what a sustainable aviation fuel industry could serve for Australia. And by 2040, we think that it could create 70,000 jobs and $13 billion worth of value to the economy. And that, in addition to fuel security, is a really important part of how we need to think that this is not just about aviation. This is about, bigger kind of global security questions. But for us, in terms of the short term, what are we doing? We spend a lot of time with suppliers and understanding the cost of the production and making sure that through that process we learn and we can understand how you bring costs down over time. Secondly, we've actually developed a coalition program with corporate partners in Australia where those partners that have signed up actually are able to use the credits that come from sustainable aviation fuel to offset their Scope 3 emission obligations as well. So you have to get creative. And we are, and there are going to be many more things that we do to test and learn over what is not just a year or a couple of years journey, it's a decade plus. So this has got to be a journey that you're on and that you're working really hard to understand all of the different drivers in the supply chain.
Julie, you talk to a lot of people in finance. Vanessa's talking about the jobs that can be created in Australia. The finance industry needs to be there.
Absolutely.
To back this.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time talking to those in the finance industry and they sound less convinced, not more convinced.
Ja, Marcel spreekt ook veel met mensen in financiën. En heel veel mensen weten nog helemaal niet dat duurzaamheid vooral doorspeelt wereldwijd. En niet eens zozeer in Europa, maar veel meer nog in de landen buiten Europa.
To de-risk this industry. We need models that allow the finance industry to step in
We hebben partnerships nodig.
Lowered risk world that allow them to step in and finance some of the innovation, because we're still dealing with innovation here in certain cases that are going to allow this to happen.
Absolutely, yeah. And at the end of the day, we need a convergence of innovation and capital to really be able to drive this.
En innovatie en kapitalen speelt ook in woningen. Speelt overal door. Dit is een heel groot voorbeeld, dit model.
And so it's really a combination of policy to support the supply side and the demand side, and give some, I would say, longevity, visibility to the financing structure.
Zichtbaarheid in de financiële structuren.
Multi-year commitments, because this is what we're talking about. It's really about, it's not spot pricing, it's a nascent industry, so we need to find a way to really stimulate the capital, so that when banks are talking to their risk committees, there's a lead investor that has confidence in a 3, 5, 7 year time horizon to recognise the importance of these investments and the impact they'll make. So it will come down to the business case. We've got to get an attractive business case for airline customers, for suppliers, for banks, to be able to really make a difference. And I think, we've seen renewable energies emerging throughout the world, in the United States, in Europe and the UK, China, gradually moving, and some at quite a fast pace actually. Vanessa said it, this is an opportunity to create a new industry in renewable sourced fuel, renewable fuels, where we can attract innovation, we can attract jobs, we can really support local communities actually, through the use of crop waste, through the use of rotation crops, really partnering in agriculture, without competing obviously with food. So it's a new industry ripe for the taking.
Isn't that, this is the question on the iPad, which from online, which I think is one of the right ones to ask. The growth in aviation over the next few years is going to come from places like India. China, you talked about, maybe China has the capability to scale some of this technology and the will to maybe scale some of this technology as well, but that's where the growth is going to come from. Is there a danger that in Europe, maybe less in the United States, that we pursue this aggressively at the cost of our airline industry, at the cost of leaving the rest of the world to do its own thing? How do we make sure that actually, I know that there are global initiatives, but the growth is not going to come in Europe. The growth is, to a certain extent, not going to come in America. It's going to come from other areas of the world. And that's where the pace of demand for aviation is going to be so much greater, and the scaling of SAF is going to be potentially so much slower. that the gap is only going to widen up between where SAF is and where demand is?
I think it depends on how you look at the accompanying ecosystems in those fast growth areas of the world. I think we shouldn't underestimate what's happening in China. We shouldn't underestimate what's happening in India when it comes to renewable fuels, because there's a growth development being accompanied by sustainable development, and ultimately connectivity and economic development and growth that comes from this industry is absolutely essential to these countries where the fast growth is. So it's about preserving this industry for the future and enabling us to do it. So reducing emissions, reducing the emission impact of the industry, and really maximising the positive impact. So, you know, you look at the job creation, you look at the investment, you look at the economic growth and development that comes through the connectivity that aviation brings, and that's really worth preserving and fighting for the future.
Yeah. Vanessa, do you see an uneven world or do you see an even world when it comes to this challenge?
Well, look, you know, I think that we have to believe that it's going to be an even world, because as I said before, I don't think there are any winners where there's, you know, an inequitable playing field. But the one thing that I do have confidence in, and I talk on behalf of my two young daughters, I think that the consumer in the future is going to be one who makes choices based on sustainability and how they can contribute.
Ja, de jongere generatie doet dat al, hè? Keuzes maken, duurzaam. En Sam gaat reizen. Hij gaat dat met de trein doen. 18 dagen. En gaat dat ook zelf onderzoeken.
Travel like we have as a generation, and I think that they're going to want to be able to do that in a sustainable way.
Guys, we're going to wrap the conversation up there. Vanessa, it's fantastic to see you.
Dus deze manier van denken zit al heel erg in het systeem van onze jongeren. En daar doen we dit voor. Heel veel mensen hebben geen idee dat we achter de schermen zo intens bezig zijn allemaal. Qantas Group.
Okay, that's part one.